Good evening. How are you?
Okay, Marcy, we're going to go ahead and get started since it is 7:30, 7:32, as a matter of fact. Okay, everybody, welcome to Shy Panther and Friends on this Thursday, October 29th. The time is now 7:30 p.m. Central Standard Time. If this is your first time visiting Shy Panther and Friends, we are on usually Thursdays at 7:30, and now we're using YouTube because there's been a problem getting on Facebook. So, and to let you know that we're here primarily because I wanted to create a platform that provided quality programming. And also, the goal of the show is to uplift, educate, and empower. So, I hope that's what I've been doing. And you can reach out to me and let me know what's happening, what you think about the show at Shy Panther and Friends Show #1 at Gmail. That's Shy Panther and Friends Show #1 at gmail.com. And you can also check out our website at shypanthermediagroup.org. All right, so usually we have a couple of panel people here with me. We got Marcy tonight and Clarence, who will be coming a little bit later, and they'll introduce who they are. And if I did not say, I'm your host, Gail, and our special guest tonight is Mr. John W. Fountain, and he is an award-winning journalist, professor, and author. And I just want to give you a little bit about his background. But first, Marcy, go ahead and let the people know who you are before we jump in. Marcy,
Hi, this is Marcy. They call me MJ, and I am, I should say, I'm a business owner. I am the owner and creator of Taylor B's Beard Oil and MJ Healthy Me health and wellness products. And I'm also a uh, police dispatcher with the city of Chicago. So good evening, everyone.
Good evening.
All righty, everybody. I'm just going to read a couple of accolades of John's because he has such an extensive, impressive background. I just wanted to tell you about a couple things. And one of his awards that he's received was in May 2016. He received the prestigious Peter Lisagor Award for exemplary journalism. And also, he also won in 2014 and 2011 for a news column or commentary in the category of daily newspapers with a circulation of 250,000 or more. And in 2014, Fountain Sun-Times column was awarded Best Column by the Illinois Press Association. And I could go on because he has at least another page and a half of accomplishments over 30 years in journalism. So I'm very excited that you could be here, Mr. Fountain, because you have a huge career. You write beautifully, and
Thank you.
when I spoke with you earlier in the year in April, we did say that we are going to purchase your book and we're going to read it, and that's exactly what we did.
Excellent.
And to my surprise, I feel like I don't know whether to approach it from the angle of great literature or a political piece. And I think it's a combination of both.
Yes.
Okay.
Well, yes. Well, thanks for having me. It's certainly my pleasure to be here. And despite everything that's going on, we gonna be all right. And
I believe
no matter what happens next Tuesday, we still gonna be all right. We need to vote, but we still gonna be all right. So it is for me. Soul Cries is it's part poetry, part commentary, both social and political, and but really at the heart and soul of it for me is an expression of my voice, which is an expression of my mother's voice and my father's voice and my grandfather's voice and his grandfather, who was born a slave. It's an expression for me of West Side folks, not just the Chicago West Side, but the West Sides all over the world. Folks from the South Side of Chicago really don't want to admit it, but the South Side ain't nothing but a big West Side. And but it is, but I really want to capture not only our pain, but also our hope, which has always existed and will always exist for the souls of Black folk.
Right. And it's almost like, to me, it's like you had some type of foresight for when the book was published. I'm not, tell me, when did you write the collection of stories?
Some of them were written over time. Like See Me was, which is chapter 1, was actually, wow, in some ways, as writers, I think we write over the course of our life, even if we don't realize that we're writing at that time. It is, and I say that because, I wrote See Me probably about 2 years ago. Um, but in some ways, I've been writing See Me for decades. And I say that because someone once asked me, they said, "What is your greatest fear?" And some folks, are afraid to be lonely. Some folk are afraid they're going to die alone. That's not one of my fears. My fear um, was that people won't see me, and that it is this idea of the invisibility of Black folk. My students in the spring of early this year semester at Roosevelt University, my students and I began a project looking at the deaths of mostly 51 mostly African American women who have been killed, and that the Murder Accountability Project, and an Alexandria, Virginia based organization that has looked at the data and says that has concluded that these murders were the work of at least one serial killer in Chicago. And nobody in Chicago wants to say that there's a serial killer, but this astute researcher says, "Look, we called it in Gary, Indiana. We're calling it in Chicago. It isn't that we want to call it, but we're looking at the data." And so part of it is these women have been strangled. Most of them, they have been burned. In some cases, dismembered. The bodies found in trash cans and so on. And part of the thing that I tell my students, and part of the reason we're doing this story, is society doesn't see them. And you add the stigma further that, that the police say that many of these women were in the sex trade, they were drug addicts. That doesn't mean that they all were. And it also doesn't mean that no matter what they did, they didn't deserve to be treated and like that and murdered and discarded like trash. And I further say that if there were 51 dogs in the city of Chicago who have been found burned and dismembered, this city would be up in arms, literally. And so that notion, that kind of invisibility that allows people to dismiss us, to discard us, to dehumanize us, to act like our lives don't matter, is, I think, a grave issue. And when sometimes people write to me because of my column, and and they're Caucasian, and they say, and they seem to be good people from what they write, and they say, I grew up in a home that was racist, some of them, or I realize that I have some tendencies, and I don't want um, to be a racist, and I want to understand more about Black people and the plight of Black America and so on. They said, "John, I know this is not your job, but can you tell me what to do?" And in one case, literally, recently, someone wanted a reading list of literature, and I sent them some literature. I don't know if they can handle it, but I sent it to them. And it was like Invisible Man and Black Boy and W.E. Du Bois and Dr. King, Where Do We Go From Here, Chaos of Community, and all that stuff. But then I said at the end, I said, if you really want to deal with racism, I offer 2 words: see me. See me. I'm a man just like you. I'm human just like you. I bleed just like you. I want the same things for my children, for my family, for my life. And so I think that uh, long answer to say that, literally I wrote this in some of these pieces within the last couple of years, but in some ways I've been writing them my whole career.
Okay. It felt that way to me. And some of the chapters I truly identify with when you talk about the West Side. On the West Side, and I believe we're around the same age. But in general, why was it important for you, even though you wrote all of these different parts, why was it important that you published when you did, like in 2019? Is that a particular reason why you published at that point?
I don't know. It just, books for me have become like, I come from a long line of Pentecostal preachers. I don't preach in the pulpit. Occasionally I do. I talk, but that's not my calling. um, my grandmother thought that someday I would be the pastor of my grandfather's church. Nah, I'm good. That is not my thing. And occasionally people will write me and they'll say, "Hey, John, when you open up your church," I'm like, "Man, that's not going to happen." I don't think we need another church, but that's a subject for another day. So I think, what I was going to get to is that when I used to preach, there's this thing that growing up in the church in the book of Jeremiah, he talks about it's like fire shut up in my bones. He said he wasn't going to say anything anymore. And he tried to shut up. He was sick of the folk not listening to him and not doing right, not changing. And he said, I ain't gonna say nothing anymore. And got to the point, Jeremiah's like, look, it's like fire shut up in my bones. I gotta say it. Whether they hear me or not, I gotta say it. And so I feel like this is just, the book was, it was just time to do it. It felt right to do it. I mean, there are other books that I want to do. I have a long list of books I want to do if I live long enough to do them. And but this one was really important to me. Um, and I do have some additional plans and hopes for this book to be displayed in different ways, to be performed, to be consumed audibly in some other ways as well.
Okay. There are so many chapters that I want to ask you about. So I'm going to jump around. The one where you said, when you talk about Chirac, I may as well go straight to it. When you said, not every neighborhood is like this, not every block, and it exists beyond the Magnificent Mile, the North Shore, and the Gold Coast. Chirac lies within the city's insignificant isles. In parentheses, Cold Coast. Two worlds, a tale of two cities, one ugly, one pretty.
Yeah, that's how I feel. It's funny, when I was growing up on the West Side, I never felt like Chicago, all of Chicago was my home. I knew I was from Chicago. I was born in Chicago. I was born in Rush Presbyterian Hospital. I knew the West Side like the back of my hand, and I felt very, very Chicago. But I did not feel like Chicago was my own until I became a journalist, a reporter for the Chicago Tribune, and I had interned at Chicago Sun-Times years earlier. One of the things about being a journalist, especially in your hometown, and covering the city, was that, I wasn't just covering the West Side, I was covering all parts of Chicago. And so I got to go to the South Side, and it became mystified in terms of, West Siders have conceptions or perceptions about the South Side. South Siders have perceptions about the West Side. And I think I lost a lot of that and came to see um, Chicago more clearly. But one of the things that was very distinctive for me was that there were two cities in Chicago. Most of the crime I was covering in Black and Brown communities. Chicago has been and still is one of the most segregated cities in America, even though it's one of the most diverse cities in America. And you can literally go from Chicago, from Michigan Avenue, and head west, and then head south, and just begin to see the texture, the neighborhoods change, even by the sense. When you get down to Pilsen, Little Village, and the smell of you know uh, uh, tacos and beans and so on, and you get the rib joints on the west side and so on. And so it is, as Chicago is, and you go to the Polish community up north. And so it's a very distinct community. But some of my friends who don't live in Chicago, they will ask me about the violence in Chicago. Because if you're not from Chicago and you hear about violence in the city, you go, but man, Chicago is a beautiful city. How is that happening in Chicago? I was watching Chicago PD one night, and they have some wonderful writers. And the show was about to go off, and Voight, one of the key characters, I think it was him, he said, "My city is beautiful, even when it's ugly." I was like, wow, somebody from Chicago must have wrote that line because it was so real and so deep. I mean, when I've been away, when I've been abroad, and when I've been to other states and cities, when I fly into Chicago at night, it's breathtaking. It
Yeah.
is beautiful to see that. But then, and so I tell them, there is this Gold Coast, there is this Magnificent Mile, there is this place where upper class, upper middle class people live. Chicago is still a city of neighborhoods, and so that's one of the reasons that this homicide, that this crime, that this scourge is allowed to continue. Because I had my son the other day, he was going to pick up a new computer at the Apple store up north. And he walked, and we were looking at the neighborhood. I said, man, I said, this, I said, son, you know what this is? I said, this used to be Cabrini Green area right here. He said, what?
Mm.
I said, yeah, son. Yeah. I said, you see Crate and Barrel and Apple stores and this and that. I said, neighborhood has changed. And it was so distinct for him that Chicago was two cities, and it still is two cities. And so I wanted to capture that in that story, to convey a sense of how this has been able to continue all of these years. Why would a city allow this? Because if you live in that other Chicago, you can live and never see what those of us who live in the other Chicago see on a daily basis.
You're right. You're absolutely right about that. And just what you were mentioning about Cabrini Green, um, it was almost like two worlds existed right there,
Yes.
the projects and the Gold Coast.
Hmm.
So that's, yeah.
Yes.
Marcella, I don't want to like, because I have so much more. Marcella, you want to?
I I don't even know where to start. Basically, I love this. I looked at it as your own personal um, anthologies that portrayed how you felt about Chicago. But I think what it does is it kind of expands to a lot of us that live here, a lot of blacks that live here. And on some of these, I cried. But um, you were talking earlier about um, your reader who you told at the end to see me. And my favorite is I Am a Shadow
Mhm.
because it speaks to what Ralph Ellison, and I would suggest that Everyone read that book, Invisible Man.
Yes.
But what Ralph Ellison was talking about in regards to them not seeing us, I've been in situations where um, you can be around Caucasian people and they're oblivious to you. You
Yes.
know what I'm saying? And it's and you can be the only black in the room, and they're just oblivious to you. But that one right there, that it touched me a lot. And my question to you, well, you already stated that basically that's the way that you felt. And this piece, I am a shadow, that one really just spoke to me in regards to that, because I can understand, even as a black woman, if I feel that way, I can only imagine how black men feel when they just are oblivious to you, just don't see you, or they see you but in a totally different light. You know, you're not a man or a woman or what have you. You're just I don't know, sometimes I feel like I'm just an object or just an appearance. And you're right, it does come down to a fact that basically you are, you're just a shadow. You know what I'm saying? You're just a shadow to the majority. And when you were speaking about Chicago, I I feel like that sometimes. I feel like a foreigner in my own city. And although I was born and raised here for the last 58 years, you know, and I'm to the point where I really just want to leave, because I do. I feel like a foreigner here because of the segregation. You can go from one end of the city to the other, and I feel like I'm in a totally different place, a totally different space of all the years that I've been here, born and raised. And I just feel like a foreigner, a stranger, you know, at times, because of we have some wonderful neighborhoods and the festivals I love, and I try to experience a lot of them in the different neighborhoods. But there's a lot of apprehension when you do that, unfortunately. And I'm sure that speaks to a lot of us here, a lot of blacks that live here in Chicago, where a lot of times a lot of us won't venture out because it's almost like a different world, you know, when you're in different parts of the city.
That's right. That's right. I completely relate to that. Um, when I will tell you that the first time I wrote I Am a Shadow, I was 18 years old. I was at the University of Illinois in Champaign. And in high school, I had read out Ralph Ellison's Invisible Man. The Sisters of Providence over at Providence St. Mel, the nuns, I don't know that everybody knew what they were teaching us. They radicalized us. They gave us Invisible Man. They gave us Black Boy. They gave us those books that I rattled off earlier. They taught us about the Chicago Seven and Bobby Seale and, Huey Newton and all of that. And they taught us Latin. So they said, we want you to be able to dissect words. And the class was called Word Power. And so when I read Invisible Man, I said, I love this idea about this contention of the invisibility of Black folk. And I said, but when I walk into a room, I don't feel invisible because I know they see me. I can look at their faces and tell they see me. And so I'm not invisible. They don't treat me like an invisible man. They treat me like a shadow. They're scared of me. And so I literally wrote verbatim parts of this when I was 18 years old. And I feel you completely. I feel like an illegal alien sometimes in my own country. I remember my wife and I, when we got married, the first year of our marriage, my wife was a British Marshall Scholar. And so we lived in England for a year. We lived in a countryside town called Lewes, which is southeast of London with cobblestone streets, 11th century castle, the Greenwich Meridian timeline passed through the town. Thomas Paine once lived there. It was a quaint little English town. We were the only Black folk there. At least I thought. I found a British brother, but we were the only two Black men in town. And my family was the only Black family in town. And I will tell you, in that town, I felt more like I belonged at times than I have at times in America. And then many years later, I went to Ghana. And when I got off the plane in Ghana and I smelled the air, I breathed in the air, and I looked out and I saw a sea of black folk, I got excited. And then when I realized that nobody was looking at me strange because of the color of my skin, it was the first time in my life I had felt free. Well, that second time. First time I felt free was when I gave my life to the Lord when I was a young man. And as I say, the old Pentecostal way was filled with the Holy Ghost. I was felt invincible. But the only thing that compared to that was walking the streets in Ghana and having people saying, "Welcome home, brother," and feeling like I didn't have to deal with this burden of racism. And so I'm going back to Ghana as a Fulbright scholar. And yeah, I was awarded a Fulbright scholarship, and I was supposed to leave this past August, but because of the COVID pandemic, things have been delayed. But I'm going to teach at the University of Ghana for a year, and also do a project. And my project is titled Africa Calling, and it is about the migration of African Americans to Ghana, to other parts of Africa, but more specifically in large numbers to Ghana. And part of the reason, the large part of the reason that they're leaving is because they say they can't deal with this anymore. And I don't think people get it, these sort of, the constant wound to your psyche
Yeah.
that we deal with on a daily basis. And so I completely feel you, completely. And so in some ways, I am a shadow. See me, some of the things that I write, they're my release and my relief. It helps keep me sane to be able to say what I feel and how this affects me. And unfortunately, so many of us, we don't have the words to say what we feel
Right.
and to process this daily grind of racism that we live with until we die.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And you were saying about Ghana. It's funny because I'm in a Facebook book group, African Americans in Ghana. I've
Oh,
been in for the last 2 years.
wow. Wow, that's excellent. That's excellent. So I've connected with some expatriates in Ghana as well, and I am so looking forward to going. I'm just so looking forward to not being a black man in some place, but just being a man.
Man, absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
I, you know, I,
Absolutely.
I identify with the feeling of feeling like a shadow, and just my response I feel like internally is anger
Mm,
and frustration. And I don't want to, I say to myself, when I feel that rising in me, I feel like I don't want to feel this every day. How can I avoid feeling this every day? And I don't want to feel hatred toward every person who's not black, um, because they're not all, bad,
that's right.
but some people are just horrible, and I'm sure we've all experienced that. But that's been my feeling, that you do get tired of it. You do. I have, as you have, and started thinking about living someplace else, someplace where all the people look like me. The majority is us, and that's important to us, especially. And at one time, you could say growing up during a certain time, like the 40s, 50s, and 60s, but it's
Hmm.
still even 2020, it's still the
Yeah.
same.
Yes.
So, and that's unfortunate, very, very unfortunate. But I do want to jump around into the book again, where
Okay.
you talked about accountability. as far as the crime that we have kind of become accustomed to.
Mhm.
Or and just the fact that what you were saying, that our lives aren't valued, our lives aren't viewed in the same way as other communities. And we have people who could be held accountable, who could answer to some of the issues, some of the things that we need done in our communities, but instead they have turned their heads, or they profit off of what's happening to us, and they appear to walk away. And I'm mentioning particularly something from, trying to remember, where chapter 29, Mapping the Ghosts of North Lawndale.
Mhm.
And on page 100, just a little bit down in the middle, where it says, and that the neglect of certain neighborhoods and their pillaging by politicians, preachers, and assorted poverty pimps predestinates so many native sons and daughters to return someday as escapees and as survivors from the island. And that when you talk about going to the west side and driving through and looking out the window, I feel like that too a lot of times. And sometimes I don't go there purposely because of what's no longer there.
Yes.
And you know what I mean? So if you could talk about this chapter that you wrote.
Well, it is funny, this is one of the chapters. This is, I remember this very vividly. I had spoken that day earlier at the Cook County Jail. They asked me to come and speak to the kids that were in school at the jail. And so these kids were graduates of the high school jail program. And they were seated. I didn't realize this until later, but they were seated according to the seriousness of the crime they were in there accused of committing. So there were folks who were allegedly committed murder. There are folks who were there for all kinds of offenses. I don't care. My thing was to try and bring some hope and to celebrate with them, because I still believe that there's a direct correlation between illiteracy and incarceration, and that the truly enslaved in our country still can't read. And so when you educate a man, a woman, then you set them free. And so I celebrated with them. But after I left, since Cook County Jail is on the west side of Chicago, 26 in California, I just drove back to my neighborhood, since I happened to be over there. And I literally saw what it is, I said I saw in terms of on Pulaski Road, the things that I saw that afternoon. And when before I wrote my first book, True Vine, my memoir, I used to take late night drives to the west side of Chicago. I was working at the Chicago Tribune as a reporter, and I would just literally get in my car sometimes late at night, and I didn't fully understand it. But I would drive down my block. My mom had moved away from there, and most of my friends, there were still some friends there. But I would round the corner at 18th and Kaminsky and drive down 16th and Kaminsky. By the time I got to 16th Street, I would be in tears. And it was just so, it was like as if I could see the kids who used to be there that I grew up with. I could see the people who were no longer there. And I could see when things were better than they were then. And it really, it fed me in some way to do it, but it was very painful. Funny thing happened when I got my book, True Vine, published. I never felt the need again to drive back down 16th and Kaminsky. I have, but I didn't feel that compulsion. And I understand now that the reason that I didn't feel it anymore is because it lives forever in my book. the memories, the people, Mr. Newell, my friends J Rat and Hucky and all of them, they're here. So anytime if I get old and super old, as long as I can read, I can take a visit back to my hometown, to my neighborhood, and remember those times. And so, and I think that in writing, it's really important to not only capture memories and to write our memoir and to write what we feel and what we think, because again, that is a whole part of seeing me, hearing what I think, acknowledging what I feel. The other part of that is about accountability, because we're facing an election now, and I'm with it. I get it. People are saying, we given the alternative, Donald Trump, we got to vote Democratic because that's the only option on the table. All right, fine. You get my vote again. But where's your accountability to Black folk? What are you going to do? And so I think that accountability also resonates within our own community. I was one of those brothers. I was living in Washington, D.C. at the time of the Million Man March. And I was living in Virginia, working at the Washington Post. I was assigned to cover the Million Man March. And it was beautiful. It was wonderful to see all those brothers. And it was a wonderful spirit. And the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan said, "Now I want y'all to go back home and take this same spirit and do something in your own communities."
Right.
And I think the ball got dropped. And I say, and have written, I don't need the Million Man March anymore. That what we need to do is to march to our schools in our communities. We can be readers to the children who need readers. We can be mentors. There's so many things that we have the capability of doing, and that does not discount systemic racism. The government has its role to play. Politicians have their role to play. But I'm not helpless. And and I say that, and some folks, some of us, we get upset and we say, "Oh, brother, you bougie and you middle class, you forgot where you came from." No, I ain't. I haven't forgot where I come from. I am the great grandson of a man born a slave. I have the blood of slaves in my veins. And but when I was growing up, if I had said to my grandmother, my grandfather, my mother, "Man, I can't do anything. The white man got his foot on my neck," they'd slap me. They said, "You got my palm on your face. Now I want you to get busy and do what you need to do." So our condition does not dictate, our current condition does not dictate the possibilities that we have. We were once slaves. We were once human chattel. We were once working from can't see in the morning to can't see at night. We survived the Middle Passage. They didn't give us anything. We earned it. We built universities. We educated ourselves. And so if we are waiting for the cavalry to come, they ain't coming. And as a matter of fact, when I was a little boy, I found myself cheering for the cowboys in the cowboy and Indian movies until I realized, wait a minute, I'm the Indian. And when the cowboy comes, they're going to kill me. So I said, come on, y'all fight. So, so I think that's what we have to do. We have to realize that we have the power to change our lives. Our oppressor is never going to set us free. That's not even in their power. God made us free, created us free. So that's how I feel.
And
I wanted
think
to
that was, when you were saying how many victims will it take to prove we value human life, and I kind of felt that common thread through a lot of the chapters where you were saying that we have to stand up, we have to do something, and nobody's coming to save us. So
No.
I don't know, maybe that's what I got out of it, where you were saying how many deaths of our daughters are enough to provoke this city where the bullets claim the innocent and young without pity. And um, it just, it just seemed to me like, just as you said, you have to start somewhere to try to turn it around, because otherwise we're killing ourselves, and they don't care. One of your chapters you wrote, American Millstone, where they feel that they've always felt that we're a problem.
Yes. The
Yeah,
problem.
no problem.
Yes. And it's funny that when the Tribune did that series, the American Millstone, which still leaves a bad taste in the mouths of West Siders, there were other people there that they could have profiled. And I don't care. I don't mind you telling that story that you find, but tell the story in its totality. And so, but if you have a preconceived notion about who we are, then that's the story that you're going to go for. I was on the West Side at that time with the family and working and in school and so on. I had a friend who was at Princeton, had friends who were at other universities around the country. They didn't find those families. And so that is, which is why we have to tell our own stories. Again, part of the continuation of oppression is not only them keeping those chains on, seeking to keep those chains on us, but it is also keeping us from telling our stories. And part of that is re-educating us to understanding that our stories matter and that nobody can tell our stories like us.
Absolutely. Now,
Yeah.
Clarence Thomas has just joined us. And Clarence, this is John W. Fountain.
How you
Um,
Good evening, John, and I apologize for being late.
sorry?
I had a deacon board meeting with our pastor, and sometimes deacons can talk for a while, but it just ended, and I was really looking forward to this conversation. I read the whole book, and I really enjoyed reading it, and uh, I was looking forward to being on the start of our discussion, but we got a call that the pastor wanted to have a board meeting, conference meeting this evening at 7 o'clock. So that just knocked me.
I
I'm like, oh man, why
understand.
would you do that? But anyway, while I was sitting here, I just kind of caught the tail end of what you all were discussing. And the thought that came to me right quick was the fact that um, part of us telling our own story, integration didn't do us any justice.
Mm-mm.
It was not it was not the best thing that happened to us. I mean, I'm not. Let me preface that by saying, I think we need to, everybody needs to get along, but not put it in a box, because uh, many of us, and I say us, Black folks, we felt that when integration started, that now we can be sitting next to white folks, and some people were really enthused with that idea. Not that it had to be a negative, but it really didn't do us any positive justice to be able to do that, because we ultimately lost ourselves in the process. And when we do that, then our identity got further and further away from us, because we started thinking
Yes.
we were anything
Yes.
other than who we were.
Yes.
And
Yes.
and that's been the issue now, and we have to start understanding, and as things come out, as we begin to research and we start to find out that we are a very productive people, and we need to recognize that and embrace that and begin to understand that the system that we live in now, we need to do more to understand that system so that we can make that system work for us. And the simplest thing, in some respects, this virus did us a favor
Mm.
because it got our attention. It got a whole lot of people's attention. But as such, we need to take that and we need to get our young people to understand that the reason they're keeping or trying to keep you from voting because they understand the power of voting.
Yes.
We don't understand. Too many of us don't understand it.
Mm.
And but a lot of us are starting to understand that, oh, if I vote, I can put some things in motion. And we have to start holding people accountable that we put in these positions. Part of the problem we have, we don't hold folks accountable.
Right.
And we have to start doing that. I didn't mean to just take over, but I just had that thought in my mind and I wanted to express that. Um, but I'm I voted already. I'm looking forward to uh, and I'm just going to trust in the fact that the good Lord is going to allow us to do what we need to do in order to turn this situation around.
Yes.
But we have to be careful because other people know that we're beginning to realize the power of the vote. Just that one little thing, because those who are in power, they understand power. We're still trying to figure it out, and that's part of the issue that we're gonna have to deal with is understanding power
Mm.
and how to use it, because we have gotten a very good lesson in power because it has been wielded big time by the Republicans in the last
Mm.
4 years.
Mm.
They understand power,
Yes.
and they have used it. Well, they used it back starting with Obama. They understood power,
Mm.
and they used it to keep him from doing a lot of things. But I'm I I'm done. I didn't want to take over
Well,
the conversation.
you know what? I want to chime in real quick. I understand what you're saying, Clarence, but I don't agree wholeheartedly. I think we understand voting, and when you look at the numbers, but black folks vote. Just look at the numbers. We vote, and we understand what voting is. That's why it was so hard. That's why we were so hard pressed to make sure that we did vote. Now, as far as conscious voters,
Mm.
I think we lack in that. I think we're more emotional voters and we're more emotional people. And I think the whole problem is with us in regards to taking our power back. The power is there. What we have to do is make sure that we're teaching our lineage in regards to how powerful we were and remind them of our past.
Mm.
And Mr. Fountain, when in your book when you talked about Soul Cries and what it was about,
Mhm.
I wrote down a question that I had, and just hear me out for just a few seconds.
Okay.
And what I wrote is, I look and read these poems that are a reflection of who, what, why, and who we are and why we are. Why so much pushback that we get from our own to stop reverting back to the past. But our past are our stories, memories, legacies, are
Mm.
what we have to remind us of a life that needs to be lived by us as African Americans. Because when you look at Jews and their history, Jews are well versed in their past. No one says anything. We have Afro-Caribbean who speak publicly about not always dwelling in the past. If we don't dwell in the past, history will continue to repeat itself. And what I think needs to happen, and I'm glad you said that, Clarence, is not so much how important the vote is, it's so much how we don't need to revisit that past and regain our power back. Because if you look at what Republicans, Democrats, they always come after Black people. Not that we don't vote. They come after us because our vote is the deciding vote. In Chicago, white people had not voted for a long time until Rahm Emanuel came up as mayor, and they did not want a Hispanic in there. Check the numbers. That's when they came out in groves and voted because they wanted to make sure they got Rahm Emanuel in there and not either one of those two his other Hispanic candidates. So we do vote. The thing is, we have to make sure that our vote is a voice as well. Because look at what happened when we got in with Obama. And it doesn't matter what party it is, these people are still in the same, to me, they're still in the same boat, the same ideology. You cannot, and it's not about how powerful they are. A lot of times it's about their fear, and you have to look at that. It's about their fear of the fact that if we got in power, the we can reverse the tables. It has always been about their fear of us. Look at us historically, all the things, the inventions, everything that we created, everything that uh, um we capitalized on. If you look at it now, they're doing the same thing, you know, ball playing, all of that. And now they want to take all of these things back. But we have to not just look at about voting, it's about everything that the entire power that we have collectively. This is what we have to do. There have to be a collection of Black people, even if you, because even other cultures of Black people, they separate themselves from us when it comes to us over here. And this is the problem that I have with immigration, because nobody wants to be on the bottom. And then now when you have these other cultural people who separate themselves from African Americans, we don't get the support that we need. But if we came together collectively as Black people around the world, period, and make them understand as well, if it wasn't for um, them getting not affirmative action, but the civil rights movement. If I'm not mistaken, Mr. Found, correct me if I'm wrong. The immigration bill was also put into play in regards to that. So this is why a lot of you have a lot of time. I mean, this is why there are a lot of immigrants over here as well. Yes, they've been migrating to the U.S., or should I say the Americas, since the 1800s, but not in groves like they have in when the Civil Rights Bill was enacted. But I think what it is I look at numbers, and I want to say again, we do vote. We definitely do vote. But it's the fact that as a collective, we need to start realizing the power that we have, especially in our dollars, uh, uh, especially in, what should I say, especially in our dollars, especially in the vast history that we have, the things that we have created. We need to take all of that back, and we need to remember that, and it needs to be instilled in our children that this is what you're up against. Know your value. That's what we I think speaks to it the most. The fact that we have to know our value and not let anybody take that away from us, not even our own, who want to say, hey, let's not dwell in the past. We're not dwelling in the past. We're remembering our history when we talk about slavery and all of that, and we're talking about the civil rights and all of that. We're not dwelling in our past. We're remembering it, and it needs to be passed down uh, historically to our children through our lineage. That needs to be the same way the Jews do. We need to be able to have that so our children and our lineage can just remember where we came from. When you remember where you came from, and when you start to like I well, put it this way, when you remember where you came from, a lot of times it will remind you of what the task is or what you have to do. And I'm very, very passionate about that, because I'm tired of people dictating to us about how we should live, the things we should do. Everything is dictated to Black people. But when you don't remember your history, this is why this happens. And then we adhere to it. We play ball. No, the time is over. You don't play ball. You let them know my power is my power, and you're not going to take it away from me. And I think this needs to be said to children too. But looking at these millennials and how they went off into the street, I'm proud of them. I'm personally proud of them, because guess what? They're demonstrating power, and you have to. You have to do that, or we will be non-existent. And I don't know if anybody agrees with that, but that's just the way I feel. We will be non existent if we don't hold on to our power. And holding on to your power is coming from where you have been or where you have been historically. And you don't revisit that, because you can be damn sure that that's what they're doing. They're not going to relinquish their power, but the power needs to be shared, or either we need to take it all back, period. Point blank, period, because we built this country. I don't care what they say. We built this country, and this is our country.
All right, Mr. Fountain.
Well, I concur with both of you. I think the vote is very important. I was remembering an African proverb that said, "Until the lion writes the story, the tale of the hunt will always glorify the hunter." And it is important for us to tell our own stories, and it goes with what both of you have said, and that is, I was looking at a video this morning. I woke up this morning with a song on my mind, and it was a song that my family used to sing in the church. Is Jesus, Jesus. Um, I love your name, and it goes on. And so I know that I did a family documentary. So I came downstairs about 6 o'clock this morning. Jesus, Jesus, there's something about your name, like the fragrance after the rain, and so on. And so I pulled up this video of the family documentary. My grandfather passed 2 years ago at 97. He was a pastor in Church of God in Christ. And so I pull up the videos, and my cousin is singing the song. And my grandfather in this part of the documentary is standing in Pulaski, Illinois, talking about the land, looking over the land that his grandfather left the family. And my great grandfather, who raised my grandfather, his name was Burton Roy, and he was born a slave. And so when I was shooting this documentary, again, I'm looking now at the finished product, but I haven't looked at it in a while. And we get to, as my cousin is singing the song, we get to the part where my grandfather is sitting in front of the headstones of his mother and father, and or his grandfather and grandmother, Burton and Annie Roy. And I noticed something today that I hadn't noticed before. It said that my grandmother was born in 1863. And that resonates with me.
Yeah.
Because I know history. And that in January 1863, the Emancipation Proclamation was signed. That was the year that my great-great-grandmother was born. So if I understand that, and I understand what my grandfather went through, and what his father went through, and what my great-great-grandfather went through, I have to vote.
Yes, you do.
And it is, and don't get me wrong, I'm about to say something that's very controversial. We have yet to have our first African-American president. We had a Black president, but we have
Absolutely.
an African-American president. because my folk didn't come here on
Absolutely.
the plane. They came here on the boat. And there is something, if I talk about soul cries, my soul cries because I got the blood of slaves in my veins. And it gives me a different perspective. It means that even if I'm at the New York Times and I'm at the Chicago Tribune and the Washington Post and I'm writing about my people and I see my people dying in the street, my soul cries. I can't afford to be quiet because I am wed to the cries of the slaves in the plantation. I'm wed to the cries of those folk who, rather than go through the Middle Passage, jumped off the ship into shark-infested waters. That's what and so when I talk about my project for Africa Calling, going to Ghana, teaching at the University of Ghana, and this Fulbright scholarship I got, I literally feel in my soul Africa calling me home. I don't know if I'm going to stay, but I feel in my soul Africa saying, come home. Because I realize as a 60-year-old African American with the blood of slaves in my veins, that if I die in America, I will not die free. When I cross that bridge into eternity, I will be free. Understand me now. My faith says that I will be free. My spiritual understanding says that where the Spirit of the Lord is, there's liberty. So Christ sets me free. But in this body, I'm chained. In this country, I'm chained. Because I want to stand on the land where I am not, and I love being a Black man, but I just want to be a man. Just a man. When I walk into corporate America, I'm the Black man in the room. When I went to the Washington Post, I was the Black man on the Virginia desk. At Roosevelt University, I'm one of the Black faculty members. And it is almost takes you to the brink of insanity if you think about it every day. So some of the times when I'm writing, I publish Soul Cries, but some of these things that I write in here, I have to write them over the course of time because I can't afford to dwell on it and still live. Because as James Baldwin said, to be Black in America is to be almost in a constant state of rage. And so so we find a way to live in this skin, in this place. The last thing I'll say is that we have to have accountability and we have to have unity. We have to understand that we have power in our own hands. And so however this election plays out on Tuesday, I'm going to be honest, I ain't worried because it's been 400 years. And I read another story in another book about some folk who were enslaved for 400 years. And after 400 years, God started doing some stuff. So it's been 400 years. We in the 401st year. So I am confident. My faith is in Christ.
Yeah.
You know, I don't care what they do in the White House. We gonna be all right.
That's right.
Yeah. And you know,
That's right. I hear you on that.
So Brian,
Our power is our history.
that was two quick thoughts. One, I wish, in fact, I regret the fact that I didn't have more in-depth conversations with my grandmother because I realize now that I'm 75 years old. So
oh, wow, you look good.
You know that when I talk about my grandmother was born around the same time as your I think you said your grandmother was in 1863.
Yeah, my great-great-grandmother,
Yeah,
yes.
your great-great-grandmother. So, and I know she was born back in, it was in 18 something,
Yes.
but it was back then. And she was from Tupelo, from Greenville,
Oh, wow.
Mississippi. And I used to hear her talk about the cotton fields and all that. But I was a youngster and I wasn't interested in hearing that. But as I got older, but then my grandmother wound up passing away before I could really sit down with her and hear those stories.
Yes.
So now the family is doing a lot of research, but it's difficult because a lot of records have been destroyed and so forth. So it's kind of hard to find. But I relate to what you're saying about we have yet to have an African American president.
Yes.
I mean, all due respect to
Yes.
Barack Obama, but the African American president that you speak of and that I understand is the ones that ancestors came over here on the boat.
Yes, sir.
Those are the African Americans. Those are the ones that have an entirely different perspective
Yes.
of what it means to exist in this country.
Yes.
You know, the two young ladies can relate to the fact that, and I was relating to you in terms of when you went into corporate America, you were the black guy sitting over here, and you were the black guy sitting over there. Well, when I got my position at the Office of Emergency Management, when I went up to the fourth floor, I was the only black guy up there. And the things that I had to do, I was constantly challenged
Yes.
because they're going to challenge you because even though you may have a position, you got folks running around that don't think you're qualified. They always want to throw you a curve just to see how you respond. And I had the worst curve thrown at me within a month after I assumed that position. I had the chief of staff come to me and say, well, we want you to terminate so-and-so. And I'm like, what? I said, no, I'm not going to just do that. And the person that they wanted me to terminate was African American.
Mm.
And I came home and I thought about it. I said, no, I said, that ain't happening. I said, let me do my own research into why you have come to this conclusion. I'm not going to just jump and do that. But that was actually brought to me. And I was like, oh, okay, here you go. You know, but so I can appreciate what you said because it makes sense. And as far as that fear is concerned, they know enough about us because they've heard our history from us.
Mm-hmm.
They know that we're capable of doing anything better than they can do it, because that's the whole thing. Just from a sports perspective, whenever black folks got involved in sports before it was over with, we taking it over. You know, probably the only sport left that we haven't took over yet is hockey, but we on our way to that one too. But I really I getting to your book. I really enjoyed your book, and I've got a lot of roots on the West Side. I lived on the West Side for a number of years myself, and my aunt lived in K-Town for years before she finally decided, with the urging of my mother, because my mother was living on the south side and she wanted, why you always live, why you got to live on the west side? And then, you know, and I'd eat mass. I said, well, Mom, what's wrong with the west side? but my aunt lived at 16th and Keeler.
Wow.
Yeah, lived right there. And the time that I lived on the west side, my ex-wife is from 16th and Millard. From there, I wound up. I was stationed at Kedge and Harrison. I was there for 8 years, and I was the community relation. Oh, I'm a retired sergeant of police.
Okay.
Yeah, and I was the community relations sergeant there at Kedge and Harrison. So I was all over the West Side community. I saw them preparing to build Holman Square. And when I walked in the room where they were having the meeting, except for, at that time, Jesse Miller was the alderman. Except for Jesse Miller, I was the only other Black person in the room. Everybody else in the room was white. And I'm like, oh, it's coming. You know,
Yeah.
and they wanted me to provide the statistics for the exit ramp at Holman and the entrance ramp at Independence, so that they would know what kind of danger they're getting in, getting off the expressway. It's crazy. So yeah, I've got a lot of I got a lot of roots on the west side, a lot of knowledge on the west side, and
Excellent.
yeah.
Okay, so we're over the time a little bit. I don't want to hold Mr. Fountain too long. This has been a wonderful, wonderful, wonderful show, and as before, but this was like really like fire today. So, and I truly appreciate your patience. Soul Cries, White and Shades of Gray. Everybody, you can purchase his book at Amazon. And I don't know where else can they get it.
Amazon, Barnes and Noble, and you can also get it directly from my website, johnwfountain.com. It's available as an ebook as well as on iBooks with Apple.
I'm sorry. What's the name of the book again?
Well, it's the one where we're talking about Soul Cries that you have already read.
Yeah, I got that one.
Okay.
Yeah, I got that one. I read that one.
Well, thank you.
The other one now, True Vine and some of his other work is also available.
Yeah.
Pretty sure at those places,
Yes.
Amazon or Barnes and Noble and online.
Yes.
Because I plan to read more. This book to me spoke to 400 years of oppression and
yes, ma'am.
in a poetic form. How much more beautiful can you get it? You know, this is wonderful. And I truly appreciate you, Mr. Fountain. I didn't know your story. I just want quick too. I didn't know your story from the time that you were a teenager, you were a young father, and you got married, and you had all this talent. And people thought that, oh, he messed up. He got a family, this and that. But look what happened. His mom believed in him, and he went on. Oh man, did he go on to be an incredible, incredible journalist, author, and professor that we have here with us today. So thank you so much.
Thank you. It's been my pleasure. You know, I was, as you know, I did a posting the other day because I had to send my degree, copy of my diploma to the University of Ghana, actually to the American Embassy who's going to send it. And so I was, I had to order it because I lost my diplomas many, many years ago. And I always, you know, I said, well, I'm gonna get around to getting them. And so I called the University of Illinois and I got, you know, my master's and bachelor's from Illinois. And so in the order, they sent me an icon, just a small picture of my degree. And mind you, I haven't seen this in years. So when I saw that little picture, tears welled up in my eyes. And I literally almost started crying. And it was because I know the journey. And I began to remember how difficult it was to earn those degrees. I remember being with my family back on 16th and Kaminsky, and I didn't have a bike, let alone a car. And I would go to walk to my grandfather's church on Sundays and to service, and I would clean the church sometimes and wouldn't tell people what I was doing. And I remember praying and saying, you know, Lord, if you'll bless me, I said, I let everything I do be said and done in your will and to your glory. So I would never tell folk I was the one who cleaned the church. I figured they figured it out. I had keys, but I would clean the bathrooms and make it clean. And what I really try to get across to people is sometimes they look at you at the point in your journey where it's easy to see that you have been successful. I had one pair of shoes and I was from a Pentecostal church, and I had one suit. So if I felt like I was going to dance in the spirit, I would button my jacket up because I had holes on the inside of my coat, and I didn't want folk to see the holes in my coat. And I wore my shoes so long they had holes in the bottom of them. And we used to have month-long revivals. I had one white shirt, one dress white shirt. And I would come home at the end of the night and wash that white shirt out and hang it up. And my grandmother taught me how to starch my own shirts. And so I would starch my shirts.
Yeah.
And, you know, and I thought about when I was, you know, in college and doing my internships during the summer, I would apply for these internships at major newspapers, but I was wise enough to not tell them that I had a family. I didn't lie, but I didn't tell them I had a family because I knew if I told them I had a family, they would probably think it was too much for me to do the internship. And so I was traveling to California, but I took my family with me. When I worked at Sun Times, I brought my family with me. When I worked at the Wall Street Journal, I took my family with me. And so I just remember those nights of studying at 10 o'clock at night till 6 or 7 in the morning, getting up, going to school, taking my kids to school, working, doing whatever needed to be done. And literally there were times when I said, Lord, let me tell you, I remember when I used to suffer panic attacks because I was under so much stress. I could not sit still for half an hour to watch the television. And there were times I was so stressed out that at the end of the semester, there were times I could not psychologically, emotionally, physically study for my exams. There were times I said, I'm quitting. I'm going back to K-Town. I give up. And I remember one of my lowest points, I felt like that. And God gave me 3 words. And the 3 words were, God won't fail. And those 3 words kept me. And I never got that low again. And so even, you know, and it meant leaving my extended family. It meant going out on my own and so on. So when I saw that piece of paper, I said, Jesus, you and I know the story.
Yeah.
We know the journey, the things that we know as adults, we will never share with folk that happened along the journey.
Yeah.
But and then I'm gonna say this and I'll be done. So I posted that. I just wrote it. I told my wife, I called my wife, I was emotional. I said, I'm gonna write something about this on Facebook. I just wrote it really quick. This probably had, you know, close to 100 people like and some others comment. And so it was late that night after I wrote it, and I got an alert and I looked at it, and there was a brother. And all he said was, when he looked at what I wrote and I had my diploma up, he wrote the words, True Vine. And I looked at him and I clicked on his name, and it said he was in Malawi, Africa. That he was in East Africa. So I responded, I said, you know my book, True Vine? Because I didn't mention True Vine in my post. And he says, yes, I read your book. I said, are you from Malawi, from East Africa? He said, yes. I said, how'd you how'd you happen upon my book? He said, I saw it in a pile of books and I picked
Wow.
it up and I read it. So from K-Town to Malawi. And when somebody calls me from, or sends me a letter from Sri Lanka and says, we'd like to read your piece that you wrote for NPR, The God Who Embraced Me, and about not having my father growing up and how God really showed himself through other men and just by his spirit, it lets me know that there is a God and there is hope and there is possibility for all of us, for our people. And we don't have to depend on whoever's in the White House, because there's an office above the White House.
Right.
There's an office above the White House.
That's right.
And whether we are conscious of it or not, he still holds the king and the president's heart in his hand. So
Yeah.
that's my story. I'm sticking to it. So I'm humbled by this. Thank you all thank you.
Well,
Yeah.
thank you.
Thank you guys all.
Thank you.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you.
Truly appreciate you so much. And Marcella, I know you got something to say.
I just want to say I went through every emotion reading Soul Cries. So that one I'll be reading over again because, like I said, it speaks to every aspect of who we are. And I would suggest everyone get it. And I want to pay you and Clarence really some compliments. I mean, for you guys to be 60 and 75, thank God the wane of being a black man in these Americas has not alter your appearance to the point where you look like you're old men.
Well, they say black don't crack.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Thank God for
So
mercy.
that's a compliment, and you know what? That also comes from knowing who you are, and being true men, accepting the fact that you are true black men and you are men. Period. And not let the stresses of that take a hold on you because it I'm sure it does is due diligence on a lot of us, on a lot of black men, just the wear and tear of just having to deal with that in America. So
Well, y'all suffer the
my
wear and
hats off.
tear of dealing with us. So
Oh yeah, we do. And you know what? How I maintain is like I said, people don't understand when you know who you are. Nobody can take that away from you. And history basically speaks to that because you don't want to revisit. You want to only revisit in words and books. But you have to know, you have to pass that down because people always take, and I got that from my aunt years ago. She never had children, but she helped my mom raise us. And she always used to say, the power that you have in you is knowing who you are. And I went further than that to study other cultures so that when they came at me to tell me about me, no, I can give you something about you historically. And some of you have not contributed at all. So let's not go there. You know what I'm saying?
yes, indeed.
Because I'll rip you apart with that. Your ancestry is garbage. And I said it. I'm the rebel on here. I said it. Some of these ancestries is garbage. So, sorry.
Okay, everybody. All right, viewers, thank you. Thank you so much for supporting the show. Thank you all, Marcy, Clarence, and thank you so much, John Fountain. And I think we better end this show now.
Okay.
Okay.
Nice meeting you, John.
Pleasure meeting you. Goodbye.
Yeah.
Everyone. Thank you.